After failing to pass a social spending bill that improves all of our lives, Congressional Democrats are in a rush to ensure the passage of an additional $500 million defense bill, not for the United States, which would already be bad enough, but for Ukraine. By the way, this is not the first time Congress has appropriated funding for Ukraine and its defense capabilities. This is an emergency attempt to give additional resources. Now look, this is all in the context of Congress and the White House beating the war drums with Russia, which I have cautioned against, not because I like Putin, not because I support Russia, but because I think there needs to be a better approach rather than escalating toward potential war with another nuclear power. I know that gets some people up in a tizzy. I'm sorry that I would like to avoid a possible war with Russia, but that's how I feel. And I also don't trust the White House, I don't trust our intelligence community when it comes to anything they have to say that bolsters their argument toward war. Now, let me continue on though with what these congressional efforts entail. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi told members on a caucus call on Tuesday that she's looking to skip marking up the bill and move it straight to the House floor, setting up the possibility of a vote as soon as early next week. Because whenever it comes to war spending, whenever it comes to military spending, do we really need to debate it, ladies and gentlemen? And to be sure, there's always bipartisan support for the war machine, always. Especially when you're dealing with a government that is completely captured by corporate interests. Now, one senior Democratic aide who spoke on condition of anonymity told The Intercept this. This is how the space for non-military options gets slowly closed off in Washington without any real debate. Homeboy or homegirl is an insider. They know what they're talking about, and that statement certainly rings true. Now, what about the Senate? What's the Senate up to? Remember, it's really hard to pass legislation in the Senate with that legislative filibuster that requires 60 senators to vote in favor of anything in order for it to pass, right? No, the Senate is fast tracking this stuff as well. Last week, House Foreign Affairs Committee Chair Gregory Meeks, a Democrat, introduced the legislation, which has 13 co-sponsors, as a companion measure to the Senate's Defending Ukraine Sovereignty Act proposed earlier this month. The Senate bill, introduced by Foreign Relations Committee Chair Bob Menendez, boasts 41 Democratic co-sponsors, including Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer, Whip Dick Durbin, and progressives Chris Murphy and Jeff Merkley. Chris Murphy and Jeff Merkley. Now, how much money are we talking about? I know I already gave you that spoiler at the top of this segment. The legislation would spend $500 million from the Foreign Military Financing Program to Ukraine for 2022. But that's not the only money that's been appropriated, or it will likely be appropriated for Ukraine. That amount would have made Ukraine the third largest recipient of funding from the State Department's federal military funding account in 2020, surpassed only by $3.3 billion to Israel and $1.3 billion to Egypt. That year, the FMF program gave Ukraine $248 million. Now, remember, when Donald Trump was being impeached the first time, what was he being impeached about again? He had withheld $400 million in military funding that had been appropriated by Congress for Ukraine, for their defense capabilities. I bring that up because that is relevant context to this story. When you're talking about Russia and its actions on its own borders, when you hear about the troops that they're amassing at their border and you're seeing that as an offensive move, I just want you guys to consider the fact that the United States has been providing weaponry and military funding to Ukraine for years. They've been expanding NATO eastward for decades, even after the collapse of the Soviet Union. Remember, NATO was meant to be an international alliance to prevent the influence, to contain the Soviet Union. That was the whole point. So when people are like, why? Well, what's wrong with NATO? Like, why does Russia see NATO as a threat? Because NATO was formed specifically in response to the Soviet Union and was never disbanded after the Soviet Union collapsed. So it's always been a way of, it's always been sold as a deterrent for Russia, right? And so Russia sees it as a threat in that now, when it comes to Ukraine joining NATO, well, they're talking about a border country that is now being funded, weaponized, and all of that by the United States and its NATO allies. And why would any country be concerned about the motivations of the United States? It's not like the United States has ever done, I don't know, preemptive wars before. It's not like the United States has ever lied to the American people about its intentions in various, conflicts that it's decided to engage in. It's not like the vast majority of Americans are completely in the dark about military efforts that we're currently engaged in African countries, like Niger, where members of our military were killed, a few years ago, and everyone's like, why are we in Niger? What's going on? Look, this is not to support Russia, but it's just insane to me how quickly money gets approved. Our precious resources get approved or appropriated toward any type of military effort, which, look, if this is just meant to bolster Ukraine, ensure that they can protect themselves from a possible invasion, that would be fine, I guess. My issue is, we just had months and months of debate over a social spending bill that would have improved our lives, and that got blocked. We ain't getting that bill. That bill is dead. But anytime there's any type of conflict, we love to stick our noses in it and we love to immediately approve, fast track the funding for it immediately. How do you not get angry at that? And then they'll use the same talking points that they've used in every other conflict. We have to do it. Oh my God, this is a major threat. We have to do it. They'll never take responsibility, the US government, for everything that they engage in to escalate the conflict. They'll pretend like we're totally innocent and we're so peaceful and we're so calm and we're just trying to live our lives, And the Russia, the bad boy Putin, it's all Putin's fault. No, but what about our behavior? What about our track record of orchestrating coups in Latin American countries? What about our role in completely destabilizing Libya, Afghanistan, Iraq? For all the so-called lefties online right now who are also engaging in beating the war drums and feel so disappointed that I'm calling for a de-escalation, ask yourself, why are you so gullible to believe the same government that has lied to you about foreign relations for decades? Wake up. You're supposed to be better. And you want to get mad at me, I don't care. But this is more of the same garbage. And it's pathetic that anyone would fall for it.
Thanks for watching The Young Turks, really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR. So those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.